Do you think Aston Martin tried to go too far with the new Honda engine? Or is this simply technical paranoia on the part of the FIA? Because what happened in the second week of testing in Bahrain is not normal. It is not a simple routine check. The FIA has opened a specific investigation into the Honda power unit after detecting anomalous data in the AMR26 telemetry. Sensor readings that don't add up. A hybrid behavior that does not fit with what is approved. And when the governing body begins to cross-reference bank data with what it sees on the track, it is because something does not convince it. And the most serious thing is not just the investigation. It's the context. Aston Martin was already one of the slowest and most fragile cars in this second week in Sakir. Low mileage, reliability problems, lack of rhythm, and now also under technical scrutiny. If the FIA confirms discrepancies in the energy deployment or management of the hybrid system, they could impose operational limits even before the decisive part of the calendar begins. That would mean starting the year not only behind, but cut down by regulation. Today we are going to analyze exactly what the FIA is investigating, what they detected in Bahrain, why the hybrid system is at the center of everything, and why this may be the first major technical earthquake of the 2025 season. What happened in the second week of testing in Bahrain was not visible to the naked eye. There was no engine explosion, no red flag caused by a spectacular breakdown, no public penalty. It was something much quieter, and therefore more dangerous. It was a data pattern. A behavior that, analyzed cold, did not quite fit with what was approved. During the long runs at Sakir, as teams racked up mileage and worked on aerodynamic correlation, the FIA began to detect unusual sensor readings on the Honda power unit that powers the AMR26. We are not talking about a minimum difference within the logical margin of error. These are discrepancies in the behavior of the hybrid system. Energy recovery, MGUK deployment, battery management and delivery combined with fuel flow. Here is the key point. Each power unit that competes in Formula One is subject to approved parameters. Energy deployment maps, recovery limits, electrical delivery patterns. All of this is recorded, approved and monitored. When on-track behavior does not exactly match what was declared, the FIA cannot ignore it. And that is what seems to have happened in this second week in Bahrain. According to what emerges from the document, the focus of the research is divided into three critical areas. The first, possible aggressive use of the hybrid system beyond the spirit of the regulation. This does not necessarily mean that an absolute limit has been exceeded, but rather that a gray area in the way energy is recovered and deployed could have been exploited. In modern Formula One, not everything is black and white. There are interpretations. And Honda could have taken one of those interpretations to the extreme. The second area of attention is the combination between fuel flow and electrical system. Let us remember that total performance does not depend only on the thermal engine or only on the electric motor, but on how both systems are integrated. If there is a way to optimize the combined delivery to generate higher accelerations at specific points on the circuit, especially at the exit of slow corners, that can generate figures that attract attention when compared to what is declared on the bench. And the third line of research is even more technical. Cooling and aerodynamic integration of the battery and radiator system. By managing temperatures exceptionally efficiently, a more constant energy deployment can be maintained without thermal degradation. That, in real conditions, could offer an operational advantage that is not evident on paper, but is evident in the data. The most relevant thing is that this investigation does not arise from a formal protest after a race. It is not a rival pointing directly to Aston Martin. It is the FIA itself crossing telemetry data from Bahrain with the approved parameters for 2026. That is, it is an internal technical analysis. And when the regulatory body acts on its own initiative in the middle of pre-season, it means that the pattern detected is striking enough. But here the great contradiction appears. If the engine was raising doubts due to its energy performance, why was the AMR26 one of the slowest cars of the second week? Because the power unit is not the only factor. The car had reliability problems and low mileage. He barely exceeded 200 laps in the second test, very far from the leaders. That means less data, less trust, less consistency. And this is the perfect storm for Aston Martin. On the one hand, a car that did not show solid performance. On the other, a power unit that is now under technical scrutiny. There is no formal accusation. There is no sanction. But there is an audit. Yes, there is cross-verification. Yes, there is a magnifying glass. The FIA is analyzing whether the pattern of recovery and energy deployment in race simulation conditions coincides with what is approved. If you find significant discrepancies, You could impose immediate operating limits without needing a disqualification. It could restrict MGUK deployment, issue technical directives, or increase real-time monitoring. That would reduce Aston Martin's room for maneuver even before the most intense phase of the calendar begins. Now, what would that mean for Aston Martin in competitive terms? It would mean starting the season with a conditioned engine. And when you're coming off a second week of testing where the AMR26 showed low mileage, reliability issues, and a lack of pure pace, any additional restrictions leave you even more vulnerable. Because this is the great contrast. If the Honda engine really was offering an extraordinary advantage, the times would have reflected it. But it wasn't like that. The car did not lead simulations, it did not impress on long runs, it did not show clear superiority. The uncomfortable question then arises. If the performance was not dominant, what exactly did the FIA detect that was so striking? The answer may lie in microdata. Not in total lap time, but in specific sectors. In specific accelerations. In slow corners where the electrical deployment can make subtle differences. It is possible that it was not a visible gain in the general chronometer, but rather energy patterns that did not coincide with the logic of the approved maps. And this brings us to the political impact. Because the moment an investigation like this leaks into the paddock, the pressure increases. Other motorists watch. Rival teams analyze. In a context of transition towards new sustainability regulations and stricter energy limits, any suspicion of aggressive interpretation generates distrust. And distrust in Formula One translates into institutional pressure. The most complex scenario is not an immediate sanction. It is a mandatory adjustment that reduces potential just before the start of the most demanding stretch of the calendar. That would affect the correlation with data obtained in Bahrain. It would change the way the team must work on the energy strategy. It would upset the balance between reliability and performance. And this is where the Honda Aston Martin project enters its first real big test. Not on the track, not in classification, but in the technical offices of the FIA. Because if the final verdict forces the behavior of the hybrid system to be modified, the development of the AMR26 will have to be recalibrated from the ground up. And now we come to the point where everything converges. Because after the second week in Bahrain, Aston Martin not only has to worry about finding performance. You have to prepare for a scenario where every parameter of your Honda power unit can be reviewed in real time. And that completely changes the internal dynamics of the team. And here is the real risk. Starting the season having to recalibrate the technical base of the car. Because while other teams like McLaren, Ferrari, or Red Bull can focus on evolution and refinement, Aston Martin could be forced to redesign energy maps, adjust deployment strategies, and modify reliability parameters under competitive pressure. Furthermore, the low mileage accumulated in the second week in Sakir exacerbates the problem. There was no room for experimentation. There was not enough volume to validate multiple configurations. If they must make changes now, they will do so with less reference data than their rivals. That means more uncertainty in the first races, more strategic risk, and less ability to react. The Honda Aston Martin project was presented as the pillar of the future, the great technical alliance to take the definitive leap. But the start has been turbulent. Reliability problems, lack of clear rhythm, and now an investigation that questions the energy behavior of the engine. It is not the ideal scenario to consolidate internal trust. And the most disturbing thing is that this situation occurs before the real battle on the track begins. We are not talking about a controversy after a dominant victory. We are talking about a team that has not yet proven to be a reference and that is already under intensive technical supervision. That conditions mentally, conditions strategically, conditions development. The second week of testing in Bahrain did not leave spectacular headlines for Aston Martin in terms of lap times. They did not lead simulations. They did not set a benchmark in long runs. They did not show obvious superiority. But what they did leave was something much more delicate, a technical shadow. The FIA opened an investigation into the Honda power unit after detecting behavior that did not fully fit with the approved parameters. There is no sanction. There is no formal accusation. But there is scrutiny. And in modern Formula One, the simple fact that the regulator is crossing telemetries with energy maps already changes the competitive scenario. Because now Aston Martin must not only develop a car that already showed fragility and low mileage in Sakir. You should also do so knowing that your engine is under surveillance. That any performance spike will be analyzed. That any energy improvement will be examined with a magnifying glass. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.